The Vanished House. One morning, Peppa and her family woke up in their usual home. Daddy Pig was warming up breakfast, Mummy Pig was making tea, and George was playing with his toys. Everything was calm, but when Peppa decided to step outside, she noticed something strange. Outside the window, there was no familiar green yard, and the sky looked dull and gray. Peppa went to the door and opened it. There was no sound, no people, just darkness. The yard was gone, and the house itself seemed to be surrounded by a dark, endless space. The walls of the house began to slowly disappear, as if dissolving into the air. Peppa tried to return inside, but the door slammed shut, and everything inside turned dark. She screamed and ran back to her parents, but they were sitting as if nothing had happened. Daddy Pig was still reading the newspaper, and Mummy Pig was still making tea. Peppa tried to tell them what had happened outside, but they didn't hear her. Then Peppa noticed that everyone in the house seemed strange. Daddy Pig no longer laughed, and Mummy Pig wasn't smiling. In search of answers, Peppa decided to step outside again. This time, when she stepped out, she found herself in an empty world. Everything around her was gray, with no trees or familiar buildings. Peppa turned around and saw the house she had lived in disappearing, turning into mist. In panic, she rushed back into the house, but now everything inside was as empty and gloomy as it was outside. Mummy and Daddy Pig were sitting in dark corners, their faces strange and lifeless. Then Peppa realized that her house was gone, and perhaps she was too. There were no traces of her family, nothing familiar. Everything had disappeared. Peppa Pig. The parents have changed. One evening, Peppa's family gathered for dinner. Everything seemed normal. Daddy Pig told funny stories, and Mummy Pig served their favorite meals. But something felt off. Peppa noticed her parents were unusually quiet as they ate, their gazes strangely empty. "Mummy, are you okay?" Peppa asked. "Of course, dear," Mummy Pig replied, but her voice was soft and lifeless. Daddy Pig smiled, but his smile was too wide, almost like it was painted on. That night, Peppa woke up to a strange sound. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, as if someone was pacing back and forth. She woke George, and together they crept out of their room. Downstairs, in the dark living room, they saw their parents standing motionless. Mummy and Daddy Pig stared at a single point, as though they were waiting for something. "Mummy! Daddy!" Peppa called, but they didn't respond. Suddenly, Daddy Pig turned his head, his eyes completely black. "Go back to bed," he said, his voice echoing and hollow. The children ran back to their room, trembling with fear. The next day, their parents acted even stranger. Mummy Pig didn't cook breakfast. She just sat at the table, drumming her fingers slowly. Daddy Pig stared out the window, ignoring the children's attempts to talk to him. "What's wrong with you?" Peppa finally yelled. Daddy Pig turned to her slowly, his smile stretching wider, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. "We're fine, Peppa. Are you?" That evening, the children once again heard footsteps. Peeking out, they saw their parents descending into the basement, a place that was usually locked. The basement door was slightly ajar, and a strange, low hum came from within. "We have to see what they're doing," Peppa whispered. The children carefully followed them down the stairs. Inside, they found Mummy and Daddy Pig standing in front of a large black mirror. Their reflections moved independently, as though alive. "Soon they'll be part of the house, too," Mummy Pig said, her voice sounding unnatural. Daddy Pig turned toward the children, his face twisted into a horrifying grin. "Join us," he said, stepping forward. Peppa and George ran back upstairs, but the hallways stretched endlessly. The walls seemed to shift and close in on them, as though the house itself was alive. "You can't escape," Daddy Pig's voice echoed throughout the house. Peppa Pig, the house that won't let go. One morning, Peppa woke up and immediately noticed something was wrong. The room was darker than usual, and instead of the bright sunlight outside, she saw a gray, murky fog. "Mummy, Daddy," she called out, but no one answered. When Peppa tried to open her bedroom door, it wouldn't budge, as if something was holding it shut. "George, are you there?" she asked, glancing at his bed. But it was empty. Peppa finally forced the door open with all her strength and stepped into the hallway. The walls looked strange, gray and uneven, as though something alive was crawling beneath the surface. In the living room, she found her parents, but their faces were blank, and their eyes unnaturally dark. "Mummy, what's going on?" "Everything is fine, Peppa." "Stay in the house," Mummy Pig replied in a monotone voice. Peppa decided to run. She rushed to the front door, but it was gone, replaced by a solid wall. "This can't be happening," she shouted. She ran to the window, but the glass had turned strange, more like a mirror. In her reflection, she didn't see herself, but a shadow with enormous eyes, slowly moving closer. "Where are you trying to go, Peppa?" A whisper came from the window. Peppa ran upstairs, and every step felt heavier, as though the floor was pulling her down. When she reached her room, it had changed. The bed was gone, the walls were black, and her toys were scattered as if someone had violently thrown them around. On the wall, she noticed a message that hadn't been there before. "You'll stay here forever." She ran back downstairs, but the hallways had become endless, twisting and stretching. Every turn led her back to the same place, the empty living room. Her parents were there, but now their bodies were distorted, and their smiles were unnaturally wide. "You belong to us, Peppa," they said in unison. Peppa tried to hide, but the house began closing in on her. The walls seemed to breathe, and the floor beneath her feet grew soft, like skin. Shadows rose up from the ground, reaching for her, trying to pull her in. "Let me go," Peppa screamed, but the house only laughed. The episode ends with Peppa sitting in the corner of her room, surrounded by darkness. Her reflection in the window no longer mirrored her movements. It just stared at her with a sinister grin. The final shot shows the house from the outside, shrouded in dense fog. A faint whisper echoes in the background. "You'll never leave." Peppa Pig, the shadow in the mirror. One morning, Peppa Pig woke up in her cozy room, but something felt off. The room seemed a little darker than usual, and her reflection in the mirror looked strange. Peppa walked up to the mirror to fix her hair and noticed that her reflection moved, just slightly slower than she did. She blinked, but her reflection didn't blink back. "That's weird," she mumbled, but quickly shrugged it off, thinking she was just tired. All day, Peppa felt uneasy. While playing with Susie's sheep, she suddenly heard someone whisper her name. She turned around, but no one was there. Her friends laughed and played, but to Peppa their laughter sounded distant, like it was coming from another room. That evening, just before bed, she glanced at the mirror again. This time her reflection smiled at her, a wide, sinister grin she definitely wasn't making. "Who are you?" Peppa whispered. "I'm you," the reflection replied, even though Peppa's lips hadn't moved. Peppa stumbled backward as her reflection stepped forward, out of the mirror. Now there were two Peppas. One was her normal self, and the other was strange, with dark eyes and a wicked smile. The other Peppa began to laugh, a low, raspy laugh, and said, "You've been good for too long. Now it's my turn." What followed was a series of unsettling events. The sinister Peppa began to act out, breaking George's toys, scaring Mummy and Daddy Pig with strange noises at night, and even drawing a creepy, unsettling picture on the wall of their bedroom. "It's not me, it's my reflection," Peppa cried, but no one believed her. Over time, Peppa started to wonder if maybe she really was losing her mind. Or worse, if the evil double had already replaced the real her. The episode ended mysteriously. The sinister Peppa stood smiling in front of the mirror, but in the reflection, there was no one there.